Chapter 51, Episode 51, Intersection 1. Terms used in this chapter. Lankebust, this is something I made up. There are similar words to it in German or Norwegian, but they're combinations of two completely different places words. In German, there's lank plus boost, while in Norwegian, there's LNKE plus bust. I've considered using the Norwegian one as HR, Svelger and Vederfolnir are Norse in origin, but frankly I'm too lazy to type LNKebust every single time, so Lankebust it is. No more diacritics or accents please. Demonic humans Farragut and Vilke died, and the demon Sisyth was extinguished. Demonic human Salusia, who oversaw the northern branch of the Devil's Hand in the Len Kingdom, stared at the demon record with a stunned face. No way. The demon record recorded the names of the demons and demonic humans that belonged to the Devil's Hand, and it also had a special function. If a demon or demonic human that was recorded in it was extinguished or killed, a red line was drawn in the middle of their name. Salusia stared at those red lines that remained the same no matter how many times she looked at them. They failed, nor were they exterminated. There were 2 demonic humans and 1 demon, and even close to 100 combatants. It was generally impossible. Could it be that the Iron Man, Landius, had appeared once again? No, that couldn't be. The Iron Man's trail was found in the center of the Len Kingdom. He was not in the north now. Jude Bayer and Cordelia Chase. There was something about the 2 of them. If she only considered their skill, the possibility that they extinguished Farragut, Vilke, and Sisyth was completely zero, but she couldn't ignore the connection of the 2. In the first place, the troops were dispatched to aim for the 2. There is no such thing as a god of disaster. As she thought about it, 5 demonic humans have already died because of those 2. On top of that, up to 200 combatants and 1 demon died too, so the damage caused by them was very serious. It cannot be like this. They had suffered so much damage. Moreover, since she failed 3 times in a row, there was no way that the other executives would stay still. They would somehow disparage and harass her. It wasn't the only thing that she was afraid of. Because there was something else that truly scared her. What will the leader think of me, if she thinks I'm useless and drive me out? Just imagining it was horrible. Being alive would be painful for her as she thought of their leader looking at her with eyes full of scorn. I have to somehow make up for it. Recovering was already impossible. The expression settlement was more appropriate. Capture Jude Bayer and Cordelia Chase alive, give those 2 young ones hellish pain, sacrifice them to summon a demon much more powerful than Sisyth. Hi. Salusia closed her eyes. She closed the demon record and stabilized her breathing before slowly getting up from her seat. Kano's? Yes, Master Salusia. Kano's answer came back quietly in the pillar's long-casted shadow. Salusia continued to talk as Kano's prostrated on her feet. Find the whereabouts of Cordelia Chase. This time I will move myself. We will mobilize all the power of the northern branch. I understand. Even Kano's recognized the seriousness of the situation, so he didn't say anything else. The only exoneration given to Salusia and himself was to capture Jude Bayer and Cordelia Chase regardless of the means or method. Salusia looked away from him. She glared towards the north where Frost Anvil was located. Thank you for your hard work, take care of yourself. Yes sir, yes ma'am, thank you for employing me. They were in the entrance of Lankebust, the largest trading city in the HR, Svelga territory. At the first alleyway after passing through the gates, Jude and Cordelia handed over to a big man his compensation. He was a man living in a village near Lankebust, and they had met him yesterday and hired him for a day. Please keep it a secret. Of course I will, even if a knife is held to my throat, I will keep it a secret. The man thumped on his chest and guaranteed it, before laughing as he left the alley. And Cordelia said, he won't keep it a secret, right? If someone asks him in exchange for a bit of money, he'll tell it. It's okay though, it's not the kind of information that you can actively sell. There was nothing else to be noticed, except the fact that they were a very pretty woman and a handsome young man. Moreover, the 2 were currently in disguise. Will we be seen as a brother and sister because of our similar hair color? When our pursuers listen to the hearsay, they will shake even the smallest information about us, so having a disguise is better than having nothing. The two had dyed their hair in the same brown color and had pretended to be siblings. Count HR Svelga will be looking for a young man and woman, so if you add one more person to our party, it would be hard for them to properly find us. It was the reason why they hired a young man from the neighborhood, so that they could pass through the gates together. Will they really be fooled so easily? We are two people who will die if we can't live together. Take a step back and think about it. How many times do two people who have run away from home, saying that they'll go on a honeymoon trip, will include another person on their journey? At Jude's words, Cordelia thought about it, and she was convinced eventually. I understand, but it just feels sad. It was about their reputation in public. Me too. Jude was behind the creation of that reputation, but he nodded his head in agreement too, before continuing talking about something different. Well then, let's hurry. There's a high likelihood that the devil's hand will move again. Wouldn't Saluzia move herself if we had caused this much damage to them? It's highly likely. She was a high-ranking demonic human who's in charge of the Northern Branch, and one of the 6 executives of the Devil's Hand. Cordelia remembered her for a moment, and then held the back of her neck as she said, "You know what?" "Yes, what?" "We are getting stronger much faster than in the game, but the enemies are also getting stronger much faster, or rather, that's the feeling that I get. It's not just your feeling, as it's correct, and perhaps this situation will continue to happen in the future." "Why?" "Why? Because we're defeating the people whom we are supposed to lose to, and breaking the flow of the original story, because we got ahead of the situation. They defeated demonic human Minos in order to neutralize the kidnapping attempt of the Devil's Hand, and as a result of defeating several demonic humans of the Devil's Hand, they were in a situation where Saluzia was forced to appear much earlier than the original story. Perhaps this phenomenon will continue in the future. Out of a frying pan into the fire. So we have to get stronger quickly. Sob, but what do we do if Saluzia truly comes at us? We can't beat her if she's a high-ranking demonic human. Cordelia's worries were reasonable. Therefore, Jude nodded and replied in a rather serious tone. It'll be fine if our travel schedule is not too slow. The land of the barbarians beyond the border is the realm of the Devil's Eye. Even the northern branch's head of the Devil's Hand will not be able to chase us beyond the border. The Devil's Hand and the Devil's Eye were rival groups who served under different great monarchs. If an important figure and the high-ranking northern branch head, Saluzia, moved, the Devil's Eye would likely respond. So once they've crossed the border, they could shake off their worries about the Devil's Hand. I feel like I'm going into a tiger's den just to avoid a lion. Well, it's not wrong because we have to deal with the Devil's Eye too. For a moment, Jude shrugged and Cordelia sighed again. She shook her body as if she was full of energy, and then spoke in a lively voice. Okay, so moving on, we have to meet Red Wind now. Did you like Red Wind? Yes, she's about next to Cordelia. I'm just asking, but how much did you like Jude? Second from the bottom, because he's the bum who tried to take Cordelia. Oh, okay. Was it fortunate that he isn't at the bottom, was what Jude was thinking. At Jude's reply, Cordelia burst into laughter and said, By the way, at this point, she's probably stuck in a slave auction house. Yes, considering the time of her appearance, she should be locked up by now. She probably got caught about a week ago. Because Red Wind was one of the playable characters, Cordelia also pretty much knew about her early actions in detail. Red Wind had infiltrated across the border to Count HR Svelga's territory in the Len Kingdom, in order to get medicine for her father. Red Storm, however, it was unreasonable for her in the first place to sneak into the territory, when she had only lived in the land of the barbarians all her life. Eventually, Red Wind's identity was discovered early on, and she got caught by slave merchants and became a slave. Because Red Wind is pretty. After all, the Great Storm tribe were elves. The northern barbarians consisted of dozens of tribes, some of which were made up of different races itself. The Great Storm tribe was a tribe that inherited the blood of the forest elves, specifically the winter elves. Because the early scenario of Red Wind was to run away from the slave auction house. Are we helping her to escape then? Cordelia smiled happily at the thought of it as she talked, but Jude shook his head. No, we're not going to do that. Why are we not doing that? Are we not going to save Red Wind? We have to save her, but as I said before, we have an urgent schedule. The reason why Red Wind was able to escape was because of the raid on the slave auction house, but we have to wait for another month for that event to happen. Can't we just sneak in ourselves and rescue her? It won't be easy, it's going to be dangerous. The place where Red Wind is locked up is in the largest slave auction house in the north. Then what are we supposed to do? Red Wind is a slave now. She is a slave? Yes, so why not buy her? You won't help Red Wind escape. Yeah, let's buy her with money peacefully, without fighting. As if it was a clear solution, Jude even showed a bright smile, but Cordelia pouted her lips. There's something I don't like. What is it? It's just. She had imagined the future of becoming Red Wind's benefactor by punishing the vicious slaver. On top of that, she found the situation itself, where Red Wind served as Jude's slave, as somehow unpleasant. Come to think of it, there is one more thing that bothers me. One more thing. How are we going to get the money? As Cordelia had said, Red Wind was beautiful, so she would be priced very expensively. The two had enough funds from resolving minor events that they encountered on the way, but that was only in terms of travel expenses. Cordelia had remembered that Red Wind's product rating was in the upper middle. To buy such a woman, they simply needed a huge fortune. But at Cordelia's comment, Jude had an evil grin instead of being discouraged. Hehe, if that's the case, I've already prepared some measures, madam. What is it? Cordelia asked as she took a step back without realizing it, but Jude grabbed her wrist instead of answering. Follow me, you'll find out right away. She wondered on what the hell was he talking about. Cordelia then nodded with an anxious face. And 20 minutes later, in front of a luxurious and enormous building, Cordelia's eyes blinked as she stood there with a blank face, and soon turned her head to Jude. Is this our means of making money? It is. At Jude's confident answer, Cordelia faced the front again, and read the letters on the large signboard. Reincarnated Casino. Where dreams and hopes come true. She had nothing else to say. Cordelia turned around right away and began hitting Jude's back mercilessly. It hurts, that hurts more, it hurts more. Cordelia dragged Jude into an alley to avoid people's eyes and yelled, after hitting him a few more times. Hey you fool, you brought me there to make money at a gambling house. Ha, I can't believe you. Hey, it's okay though. That okay is sh*t. Let's break off our engagement, break it off, gambler is out. Cordelia opened her mouth as if to bite him, and Jude took a step back from her, and then raised one hand forward like a trainer, trying to calm an animal as he quickly said. It's really okay, you know who I am, right? A gambler. I'm Outboxer 009, the indisputable first place in Legend of Heroes 2's rankings. I suddenly want to hit you more. Anyway, trust me, have you seen me talking nonsense? Jude earnestly spoke as he looked directly at her, and Cordelia seemed to scowl before she eventually sighed, and her shoulders sank. Can you really do it? I can do it. Okay, I'll believe in you. Thank you, madam. I'll make you lightning rich soon, so please look forward to it. Don't spend it all, don't waste our money. If you do so, I'll break off our engagement immediately. Do you understand, fiancé? I understand, so come with me. Jude reached his hand out to Cordelia as if escorting her, and Cordelia held Jude's hand with a dissatisfied look. Now then, shall we win the jackpot? You can't just win it like that. Hey, don't worry, and frankly, don't you believe in me? Because he was Jude and not anyone else. HMPH, I do not. Cordelia snorted right away, but he could tell from her eyes. After all, she would have opposed it to the very end if she didn't believe in him in the first place. I will live up to your trust, my lady. I didn't say that. In the end, the two walked towards the casino side by side. And at that same time, A very important meeting was taking place in Bailon, the border city in the southernmost part of the northern region. I can no longer set it aside and wait and see. Speaking in a very serious tone was Count Bayer, Jude Bayer's father and one of the 10 swordmasters in the Len Kingdom. If the current situation continues, Count H.R. Svelga will have no choice but to put them in the wanted list, and that would be the worst situation. 3 counts were searching all over the north to catch the 2 youths who have eloped, despite the fact that their engagement was already recognized by both of their families. There was nothing disgraceful about their relationship, yet the 2 did that. Moreover, the movement of the devil's hand weighed on his mind too. They had to secure the 2 before something really big happened. It would be nice if either you or I could move in person, but that would be impossible. At the words of Count Bayer, Count Chase nodded his head in silence. Whether it was Count Bayer, who ruled Bailon, or Count Chase, who was in charge of the Red Dawn Tower, it was unreasonable for them to go all the way to the distant territory of Count H.R. Svelga. They would most likely be away for more than a month. So I'm thinking of sending Gar-El instead. Gar-El Bayer, the eldest son of Count Bayer and the older brother of Jude. In fact, Count Chase nodded at the strongest hand that Count Bayer could take out. On my side, I'll be sending Adelia. Adelia, isn't she in the center now? Her situation was different from Gar-El, who had stayed with Count Bayer to inherit the territory. Count Chase's eldest daughter was one of the 7 heads of the Royal Guard Magic Corps. She came here to this faraway place after she took a vacation. She seemed to have a lot of complaints on what happened recently between Jude and Cordelia. Jude, that parasitic younger brother, it's clear that he's toying around with the kind, innocent, and angelic Cordelia. Those were his eldest daughter's words that Count Chase had omitted. Gar-El and Adelia should be enough. They should be enough. When will they depart? It's possible for him to do so right now. This side too. They could no longer stand by and watch Jude and Cordelia cause trouble to Count H.R. Svelga. Furthermore, they were fathers who were very worried about the safety of the 2. And an hour later, Gar-El Bayer and Adelia Chase left the border city of Bailon to arrest the crazy couple. Chapter 52. Some translation mistakes. I used to refer to Count Bayer as one of the Len Kingdom's teenage swordmasters, but that is incorrect. He is actually one of the 10 great swordmasters. The Korean word they used here is Jumho, which can literally be translated to sword Jium plus great Ho. An interesting trivia. Outboxer 009 is a reference to real-life pro gamer, Box R, Lim Yo-Hwan. After he retired from esports, he became a professional poker player. Terms used in this chapter. Side card, also known as kicker. It is a card in a poker hand that does not itself take part in determining the rank of the hand, but may be used to break ties between hands of the same rank. Discard from the family register. South Korea used to have a family register system called Hoju. It has since been abolished since 2008 because it was highly patriarchal and opposed by many groups. Nowadays, it is used by adults as an expression to scold and threaten their children, with an implied meaning that they'll be kicked out of the family or disowned if they continue to behave badly. Gar-El Bayer, 27 years old. He is the eldest son of Count Bayer and the next Count of Bayer. As the successor of Count Bayer, one of the 10 great swordmasters, he was a master of the sword who had gained fame since his childhood. Even though the eldest sons of other counts already had 2 to 3 children, there were many reasons why he was still a bachelor. But the truth is, most of those reasons were just a pretext, and there was only one reason why Gar-El was still unmarried and lived alone. Adelia Chase, 24 years old. She is the eldest daughter and the middle child of Count Chase, who had 1 son and 2 daughters. She was a genius wizard who joined the Royal Guard Magic Corps of the Len Kingdom at the age of 19, and after 5 years, she became one of the heads at the young age of 24. It's been a long time, Lady Adelia. It's been a long time too, Lord Bayer. Gar-El didn't wear his armor as he wasn't going on a battlefield, but he was wearing a knight's usual attire under his coat. And as for Adelia, as the sister of Cordelia, she was also an incomparably beautiful woman who resembled their mother and had dark blonde hair. She was dressed in a wizard's combat attire with the emblem of the Royal Guard Magic Corps on it. It was a luxurious and gorgeous outfit with gold thread embroidered on her black clothes that fit her perfectly. Although the reason we've met like this is not very good still, it's good to see you in good health. Me too. Gar-El was smiling nicely as always, while Adelia answered him a little brusquely as she made a HMPH sound before speaking again. You may have already heard it roughly, but I'll say it again. The plan is simple. First of all, regardless of night and day, we'll race towards Count H.R. Svelga's territory until we reach somewhere near the northern border. Will you use tracking magic after that? Adelia nodded when Gar-El asked as he climbed up on the horse. I have the ring my father gave me, so we can track them down. How far is the scope of the tracking magic? It's quite wide, as it's about the size of a small manor. If it's as large as Count H.R. Svelga's territory, we'll only be able to search it in parts. Still, it's reassuring. After all, it's Lady Adelia. HMPH, it's not something to be praised about, though. Adelia snorted as she gathered her hair and tied it up, before holding and fixing the horse's reins. Anyway, let's go. I will take the lead. I am more familiar with the nearby geography, so I will take the lead. Everyone, I'll be back. Despite Adelia's sharp attitude, Gar-El smiled and answered, before greeting those who came to see them off. Afterwards, he made the horse start moving by nudging it with his foot. Giddy up. As Gar-El had great horseback riding skills, he looked impressively cool as he ran ahead, but it wasn't for Adelia. She looked at Gar-El, who had run ahead, with a displeased face as she made a HMPH sound, and then looked back at the people sending them off. I'll be back. She coldly spoke as she spurred her horse and followed after Gar-El, though if one looked at her momentum, it seemed like she was in a race, rather than being his companion. As for those left behind, among them was Marja and Dahlia. The two looked at each other naturally and smiled awkwardly. It will be fine, right? Maybe. Gar-El Bayer and Adelia chase. With a somewhat ominous premonition, Marja and Dahlia looked at the two people who had already gone far. Someone had said, "Do you know what a gambling house and a luxury buffet have in common? It is the fact that the store wins in the end." It was exactly what he said. No matter how much one eats in a luxury buffet to get their money's worth, all they'll have in the end was an upset stomach. And no matter how hard one tries at a gambling house in the end, the visitors were bound to lose their money. Of course, that's an average story, and overall, it's just the casinos that make money, but there are certainly a minority who make money, whether it's small or huge. Otherwise, no one will go to the gambling house if they didn't make any money. So you're that minority. I was always the winning minority. I even had the status of being in the ban list of 3 Las Vegas casinos. Before going to the casino, they stopped by a nearby accommodation and were currently in the middle of changing clothes. At Jude's words, Cordelia blinked as she arranged the skirt of her fabulous red dress. Ban list. Yes, it's kind of a blacklist. If you go there, you will not be allowed to enter. As Jude talked a little proudly, Cordelia stopped arranging her skirt. She then touched her chin and soon said as she clenched her fist. As expected, you were a scammer as expected. Humbug, am I not right? No, it's not. I never cheated, okay? I was just so good at gambling that I was denied entry, okay? F***ck, who the hell are you then? How can you continuously win if you didn't cheat then? It's nice to hear you saying F***ck after a long time. Don't change the subject. Well, turn around for now. Have you finished dressing up? Oh, you're all dressed up. This person, food, didn't I tell you not to turn around? I just turned around. Come closer. I'll tighten the straps on your back. Dahlia used to do it. Dahlia isn't here right now. It was as Jude had said, so Cordelia came near Jude and showed her back, and Jude tightened the dress straps one by one as he continued talking. Do you know about card counting? I don't know. It's literally counting cards. You remember all the revealed cards and infer which cards haven't been revealed yet, and based on that, you calculate the probability for each situation and make the best choice. It's hard to listen to just that, but if you do that, can you unconditionally win? No, the win rate is just a little over 50%. In modern casinos, a lot of various techniques have been developed to invalidate card counting so that it isn't effective. I'm done tightening it. When Jude had tightened all the dress straps, Cordelia turned around and looked back and forth on her own body before picking up the necktie. So why were you blacklisted? As expected, didn't you cheat by counting? Don't move and stay still. Card counting is basic, and there are a few other techniques. And basically, the game is played with a dealer, right? Unlike machines, humans display a lot of information even if they are just quietly standing. And in fact, Jude's specialty was in poker games like Texas Hold'em. Do you mean you were a professional poker player then? I wonder. In response to Jude's shameless answer, Cordelia pouted her lips and deliberately tied up Jude's tie tightly. Gax, hey. HMPH, I'll tie it up again. The dexterous Cordelia soon nicely tied up his tie again. I don't know about anything else, but I think you're the best at this. There are a lot of things that I'm good at too, okay? Despite the fact that she snorted, the corners of Cordelia's mouth were raised, and her mood became better at his compliment. In any case, are you confident about this? I am confident. It's not even a modern casino that has prepared several preventive measures. You have a wicked smile. You will soon love this smile, my lady. I bet I won't. Nevertheless, Cordelia was somewhat relieved at his confident appearance. Well then, shall we go and win some money? Yes, Daddy, I only trust in Daddy. Daddy will make our princess rich today. I'm so excited. Let's do this. Okay. The two stopped their conversation, looked at each other, and took a deep breath before they left the accommodation together. And 2 hours later. Blackjack. The dealer facing Jude turned pale, and Jude had a gentle smile as he looked back at the coins piled up in front of him. It's about time. After an hour of observation and an hour of winning and winning again, the time has come for the store to put on the brakes on him. As expected, it's coming. A giant man dressed in a high-quality suit was approaching him in big strides. He'll moderately tell Jude to get out of here in a refined language while exaggerating his words and speaking at length. Well, should I slowly withdraw now? Even if he exchanged the coins now, it would already have exceeded Red Wind's price by 1.5 times. Okay, this is enough. Having made up his mind, Jude turned his head towards the giant and brightly smiled. But without even looking at Jude's smile, the giant continued to walk away and stopped at an unexpected place. What? Jude unconsciously blinked his eyes before getting up from his seat and looking at the place where the giant stopped. It was the roulette place, and now that he saw it, nearly half of the casino guests were gathered in addition to the supervisor. I'd like to exchange the coins into money, please. This is a tip. After handing a coin to the dealer, Jude got up and walked towards the roulette place. And it was at that moment. Kaya. She got it right again. Awesome. Thunderous exclamations of amazement broke out among the audience. They had such enthusiastic reactions that he wondered why he didn't hear of their sounds before. And in the center of all that enthusiasm was an incomparably beautiful girl with long brown hair, wearing a red dress. Cordelia. Jude unintentionally said her real name while she was going kaya and being happy. Cordelia then looked back at Jude with a bright face and hugged him. I got it again, it's incredible. What the hell did you get? And what is this flow? Jude lightly pushed Cordelia away first before seeing the roulette board. He then saw a mountain of coins piled up in front of Cordelia. At first glance, it seemed to be 2 or 3 times as many as what Jude himself had. Oh, little sister. The two had disguised themselves as brother and sister. Cordelia came to her senses at Jude's words, and said after she widely spread out her shoulders. Oppa, I'm totally awesome, it's awesome. Jude could read from the flow that Cordelia had hit the jackpot in roulettes. But how the hell did that happen? Wow, she's such an incredible miss. It's not a side card, but just one red and black match, yet she's earned as much as I did. The man who was watching right beside him laughably said as if it was his business, but the other nearby spectators also added some words. I've seen her got it 10 times in a row. Didn't she get it 12 consecutive times? It's exactly 17 consecutive times. 17 consecutive. The last one was Jude. Cordelia was perfectly satisfied at Jude's totally startled and utterly bewildered face. That's right, 17 times in a row. To win in roulette, the player determines whether the ball stops in the red or black pockets. The probability is. The dividend of betting on one is the lowest, but it's a different story if it's 17 times in a row. If you bet on only one, the dividend is doubled if you win, but if it's the 17th win of 131,072 times. TN, frankly, I don't understand much about roulette, but this is the best explanation I can give. In roulette, you can bet on one or several numbers, and if the ball lands on your bets, your payout's dividends are determined by the number of your bets. Betting on one only means that you're betting on either even or odd numbers, or you're betting on either red or black. Betting on one only gives you a 50% chance of winning, but the dividend is the lowest, as it only doubles your dividend payout. Every time you win, your dividend is doubled. So if you win 17 times in a row, your dividend becomes 131,072 times. It's not 17 times 2, but 2 raised to the 17th power, so the formula is 217 equals 131,072. Even if she started with the cheapest coin, which is 1 copper coin, it would increase to a tremendous amount if it was around 130,000 times, so it was natural that a mountain of coins was piled up in front of Cordelia. On the other hand, the probability of winning 17 times in a row could also be said to be 1 in 2 raised to the 17th power. That is, your chances in winning is 1 in 131,072. How did you do it? Since he remembered his past life before he came to Pleiades, or rather, in both his current and past lives, Jude had never been as surprised as he was now. Cordelia widely smiled at Jude's face that seemed to have witnessed the mystery of the universe, and then she spoke in a triumphant tone. With feeling. With feeling. With feeling. Equals Cordelia's flashback, greater or equals. Somehow, I feel that it would stop in red this time. Black this time. Black again this time. Looks like it's red this time. Equals end of flashback, greater or equals. Are you a real animal? I can hear you. However, Cordelia didn't hit Jude's back because of her good mood. She didn't even try to bite him. Anyway, let's finish it at this point. Wise, the more money we have, the better. Let's end it, it's completely enough now. At Jude's remark, Cordelia pouted her lips, and the onlookers around them began booing him. But Jude didn't pay them any attention. Let's go now. Jude strongly spoke, and Cordelia thought for a moment before nodding her head. Okay, let's go. Why don't you play another round, miss? One more round. The spectators around them shouted hardly, and the giant, who seemed to be on the casino's side, also tried to do something. It now seemed to Jude that he didn't want to stop the game, but rather to somehow keep it going. Because he wants us to eventually lose. 17 consecutive wins was undeniably a miracle. I'm sorry, but my brother is strict, hee. Cordelia responded with a cute smile to the onlookers, and after exchanging the coins they had, she left the casino with Jude. Jude was very nervous that they would not be able to exchange their currency or be prevented from leaving, but it ended with a strong request to visit again tomorrow and an invitation to the auction house, because the amount of money the two had was not enough for the casino to directly pay. They're telling us to spend some money in any way. The slave auction house, general auction house, and this casino were all owned by Byrne, who was called the King of Lankabust. Well, it's not bad. Since there is an invitation to the auction house, participating in the auction would look natural. Jude sighed in relief and drooped his shoulders, while Cordelia looked up at the sky with a cheerful face and said, "It's a beautiful night." Of course it was. Even by the standards of the two as children of the 12 families, they had earned a huge amount in just 2 hours. While we are rich now, the casino was a fun place. It's a place full of hopes and dreams. Hey, it's funny that I'm telling you this now, but the casino is a pandemonium, okay? You should just go with the thought of spending money and having fun, because it's usually a place where people ruin themselves from gambling, okay? HMPH, it was a nice place, so why? No gambling, no gambling. Gambler is out, okay. Let's break off our engagement, break it off. The positions of the two had reversed, now compared to before they entered the casino. And Cordelia had a similar reaction to that of Jude 2 hours ago. Hee, can't you trust in Nunar? Please. Okay. Anyway, it was exciting. Red Wind is mine now. Cordelia had grumbled before that it wasn't good to buy Red Wind with money, but she had completely changed her mind. Jude suddenly grabbed Cordelia's wrist tightly as he spoke again. I'm saying this out of concern for you, but just think that today was a truly miraculous and lucky day. Do you understand? Okay. It hurts. Cordelia won't do it again. Okay. I'll stop here. I understand. It's not like days like this come often. Hard, just don't make me say that I'll discard you from the family register. Yes, Daddy. Cordelia replied like a good child as she took the lead, and Jude followed Cordelia closely while being wary of thieves. Faintly laughing at Jude's worried appearance, Cordelia tied her long hair together and then asked him, By the way, Jude, when are we going to the auction house? By chance, it will be open tomorrow, so we don't have to wait for long. Are there any good items for sale besides Red Wind? We are rich now. In the original story, there was no opportunity for Jude and Cordelia to properly participate in the auction house. Cordelia was busy from being chased by the devil's hand in the beginning of her scenario. On the other hand, when Jude's scenario began in earnest, the entire North was in a mess because of the barbarian invasion. It goes without saying that Red Wind was locked up at the auction house at that time. Moreover, it was presently an auction that will happen a month before Red Wind's scenario began at the auction house. In other words, it was an unknown place for both Jude and Cordelia. I'm suddenly looking forward to it. You're right, it's like I'm looking forward to what would be there. It feels like we're entering a new town and visiting a weapons store, right? What items could be there? Perhaps it would be possible to get a jackpot item. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. We'll meet Red Wind and also go to the auction house. Yeah. Maybe we'll find items that are really necessary. And in the next evening. Seriously, it actually happened. We have good luck. Cordelia was in front and Jude was at the back. An unexpected meeting was waiting for the two. Chapter 53, Episode 53, Intersection 3. Great Monarch is now Overlord. Technically, Great Monarch is a correct translation, but Overlord sounds more villainous and gives off a last boss vibe, so Overlord it is. Terms used in this chapter. Nadachi, a large and long Japanese sword, having a long handle suitable for multiple two-handed grip positions. The Lankebust auction house had one special rule. All participants must cover their faces with masks. Partial masks that could somehow make it easier to recognize the face was not allowed. Only masks covering the entire face was permitted. Of course, sex and age could be inferred to some extent from one's height and body type, but the existence of masks were bound to guarantee considerable anonymity. They're selling stuff that you can't buy if your face is revealed. Well, there are quite a few items that are considered shady. Right now, it's buying those kinds of slaves. In the Len Kingdom, slavery was somehow regarded as an old-fashioned evil practice that was slowly disappearing. Moreover, most of the slaves traded in Lankebust were not slaves for labor, but slaves for dirty and shady purposes, such as playthings for sexual entertainment, subjects for body experiments, and combat slaves for gladiator competitions. I want to save her quickly. Although Jude did not give a specific example, Cordelia already knew the truth to some extent. That is why she wanted to save Red Wind as soon as possible. It'll be all right, we've got enough money. Let's not struggle in a vain bid, but just buy her promptly with an immediate offer. Yes, because it's exhausting to participate in a competition just to fail. According to the flow of the original story, Red Wind was sold once at this point of time. And then she came back as a returned item. Whatever the reason may be, it just meant that there was a buyer. There was the concern of getting tired in a fruitless competition, as Cordelia said, and it would also draw people's attention unnecessarily. In any case, Jude and Cordelia were fugitives, so it was better to do things as quietly as possible. Good, I tied it well today, as expected of me. Cordelia smiled and praised herself after tying up Jude's tie neatly, while Jude thanked her without any complaints and then took out the masks they would be using. They were white masks that covered the entire face and did not have any patterns drawn on them. I dyed my hair too, so if I wear this, no one will recognize me. I don't usually wear a pink dress, but dyeing my hair was worth it. Cordelia said something a little unrelated, and after wearing her mask, she looked at Jude, who gave a small clap. It looks good. My face is all hidden, but I still look good. Cordelia answered with a giggle and led the way as if she wanted to go quickly. Jude stared at the back of Cordelia and admired her again, even though he already knew it. Pretty, she's really pretty. She wore a mask that covered her entire face, but he still felt that she was beautiful. Cordelia wasn't just an incomparably beautiful girl for no reason, as her qualities and body itself were pretty. Of course, I'm an absolutely handsome boy. What are you saying all of a sudden? Recharging my confidence. Just come quickly and stop with the nonsense. Yes, madam. Jude quickly answered as he wore his mask and caught up with Cordelia. A dozen minutes passed like that. Jude took a deep breath once they entered the auction house right next to the casino. Woo, how good, it smells great. What smell? The smell of treasure. At Jude's remark, Cordelia snorted and sniffed in the same way. She then blinked her eyes and said, "Oh, it's real. Huh. It smells like treasure." Jude unconsciously became nervous at Cordelia's words. Because it was Cordelia's words and not anyone else. Where is it? What's the grade? Is it perhaps myth grade? What is this crazy bastard saying? I was just kidding. How can a human smell treasure anyway? You're an animal. Cordelia tried to naturally open her mouth to bite Jude, but it was useless because of her mask that covered her mouth. Anyway, let's stop this nonsensical talk for the moment and get Red Wind first. Of course, they were going to search for treasure, but their top priority was to secure Red Wind. Nodding at Cordelia's words, Jude spoke as he looked back at the auction house's interior. There are two possible ways that you can choose in Lankabust's auction house. Are you talking about the market and the proper bidding ceremony? Well, it's not precisely the correct term, but it's roughly correct. In front of Jude and Cordelia right now were the items to be sold in the auction. They were displayed in regular intervals like that of an art gallery or museum. If there's an item a person wants, they write down their bid first, and after a certain period of time, the item is handed over to the person who had placed the highest bid. It was a simple and clear but very time-consuming auction method. We are not going to participate in the proper auction. Yes, because it's going to draw us some attention. We also don't know if we really want the items that will come out. The auction was scheduled to be held in the next 2 hours, in which the moderator introduces the item, and each purchaser attempts to bid by raising their panel, just like what was commonly seen in movies. Let's buy everything that we want and then get out of the auction house. Are we also getting out of Lankabust then? Yes, that's correct. Jude's mind was troubled by the devil's hand, aside from Count H.R. Svelga. It was best to cross the border before being spotted by any of them. Okay, moving on, let's go and buy Red Wind first. It's probably this way. Thinking of Lankabust's auction house that he remembered when he played Red Wind, Jude seemed to be taking some cautious steps forward first, but he soon led Cordelia with a confident manner. First, basement floor. Unlike the bustling atmosphere of the first floor, the place had a gloomy, dreary, and subdued atmosphere. Inside the glass cases erected at regular intervals, the slaves for sale were almost in the state of being naked. I don't like it. Cordelia clicked her tongue and stepped forward at once in big strides as they headed to the place where Red Wind was. Red Wind. Jude's eyes finally saw her. A girl from the Great Storm tribe that was 16 years old this year. As she inherited the winter elf's blood, her pure white ivory skin and azure hair reminiscent of the clear blue sky were very memorable. Her long hair that came down to her hips were deliberately tied to the back to make her long ears visible. Cordelia gritted her teeth as she saw the chains tied to Red Wind's slender ankles before looking at Red Wind's face again. Perhaps because she was confined in a case where she could only see the inside but not the outside, there was a deep fear in her blue eyes that couldn't hide her anger and hostility. "Let's buy her right away." "Yes, so just calm down a bit, okay?" "Okay." Cordelia gave a short answer as she looked up at Red Wind again, and Jude immediately filled in their purchase price in the bidding column placed next to the case. "The auction house staff will come now." At Jude's words, Cordelia tightly shut her mouth instead of answering, because she didn't want to cause any unnecessary trouble. And after a few seconds, a neatly dressed auction house employee approached them, as Jude had expected. "Oh, that's an excellent choice. It's hard to find such a beautiful woman among the northern barbarians. However, she's a little fierce, so please be careful about that part." Cordelia reflexively lost her temper at the auction house's employee's words, and Jude quickly blocked Cordelia with his body and shamelessly smiled as he said, "The fiercer she is, the more delicious it is to tame her." "Haha, that's right, that's the true pleasure of rearing." The auction house employee laughed and smiled, and then handed out some documents to them. After checking Jude's ability to pay, he spoke again. "It takes some time to pack, so why don't you look around for other items in the meantime? Between the next 20 minutes from the start of the auction and until its end, you can come to the sales office on the first floor." "Yes, I will do so. Thank you for your kind guidance." "Thank you very much. We hope you enjoy your shopping." When the employee made a gesture after politely bowing down to them, the light in Red Wind's case went out. Perhaps they were going to take out Red Wind through the glass case's floor or through the wall behind it. "Now then, shall we go too?" "Okay," Cordelia answered in a low voice, and Jude grasped her hand as they hurried up to the first floor. Okay, now that we've finished the trade without any problems, let's really enjoy the auction. There must be a lot of good items." When Jude intentionally spoke in an energetic voice, Cordelia pouted her lips several times before she nodded. She was angry because of Red Wind's situation, not because of Jude, but she couldn't unreasonably vent out her anger on this place. "Since we've come here, let's find the true treasure. I will trust in your feeling." Jude added some words again, so Cordelia also spoke in quite a cheerful voice to match his rhythm. "Do you mean something like a treasure with a stupendous performance, but others don't know its true value because of its outward appearance, like what is common in novels and manhwa?" "That's correct. Of course, such an occurrence couldn't have been really common. The people at the auction house weren't fools either. After all, they had a group of experts working for them. But it was just at that moment that they had thought so." Isn't that the heavenly judgment?" "Yes, you're right." Jude unknowingly replied in a blank manner as he promptly opened his eyes wide, and it was the same for Cordelia. "Why is that appearing here?" The two rotten waters spoke almost at the same time, and they approached the glass case in hurried steps while trying to be inconspicuous as possible. "I'm sure of it, it's currently in the state before its seal was released." Cordelia blinked her eyes at Jude's words. It wasn't because the heavenly judgment suddenly appeared before her eyes. It was because Jude spoke in Korean instead of the continent's official language. Korean. It's been a long time since she used it, so Cordelia nodded and spoke Korean with a slightly awkward pronunciation. Because no one else can understand it. It was like the time he used the Korean language as a password substitute when he first wrote a letter in the past. The only people who could understand Korean in Pleiades were Jude and Cordelia, so it was a perfect counterintelligence measure. It's somewhat awkward and strange. Moving on, I'm sure that it's the heavenly judgment. I wandered around, trying to find it prior to when the seal was released, and now it was actually here. Jude admired it again as he recalled the heavenly judgment setting. Heavenly judgment. It was one of the 100 swords that the Archangel of Judgment, Oriel, forged for her warriors. She was one of the 4 archangels of heaven, symmetrical with the 5 overlords of hell. As a sword forged by an archangel, the sword's performance itself was tremendous and amazing, but the true value of heavenly judgment was unlike any other. Day of Judgment. It was the name of the ultimate skill, inherent to the heavenly judgment, and could only be used by the heavenly judgment. Although there were some differences in the power or range depending on the user's abilities, if the user uses it, the Day of Judgment will arrive as its name suggests. Numerous blades of light would come pouring down from the sky like a heavy rain. It did not cause any damage to heavenly beings, but it was not an exaggeration to say that it was a skill that rained down death from the heavens for the opposite existences of the heavenly beings, which were the demons and the undead. The long war between heaven and hell had destroyed most of the 100 swords, leaving only a few. And one of them is here. Cordelia and Jude simultaneously gulped. I'm glad that it was sealed. It seems like its appearance was just recognized as a ceremonial dress relic. We must buy this one. The heavenly judgment in front of them was sealed, so it was nothing more but a little fanciful ceremonial sword, as Jude had said. Its blade was blunt, so it was no different from a club, and the decorations were excessively flashy, which would interfere with its use. But it will all change once you unseal it. That's right, and it is only a heavenly being who can release that seal. Heavenly being? Angel? And what that implied? Cordelia can unseal it. Of course, it was a story after she awakened as an angel through the ancestral regression technique, but the fact that it could be solved was somehow important. Ha 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 ha, I want to buy it quickly. I'll buy it and hug it every night when I sleep. Jude strongly agreed to Cordelia's words, and he hurriedly looked into the bidding board. There was no immediate purchase price, but without any hesitation, Jude promptly wrote down twice the original purchase price. In the eyes of others, it was just an ordinary ceremonial sword, so there was no one who would challenge this amount of money. Let's look around other places quickly. I really think that there would be more like this. Yeah, it really smells like treasure. Sniffing with her nose, Cordelia headed to a certain direction, as if she was a person being lured by the treasure with her senses. And about an hour later, the cursed Reaper's garment, the ancient crest, and even the Eastern warrior's sword. Cordelia had a silly snicker behind her mask, and Jude said as he abruptly hugged Cordelia. We hit the jackpot. That's right, Daddy, we hit the jackpot. Cordelia likewise hugged Jude and rejoiced with him. Because they really hit the jackpot. As its name suggests, the cursed Reaper's garment was a garment that was cursed. However, if the curse was removed, it could be used as a Reaper's garment, and the effect of the Reaper's garment was as follows. He who wears the garment of the Reaper will exude the force of the Reaper. Those who attack a person wearing the Reaper's garment will fall under the Reaper's curse. In a word, it was a defensive gear that caused a weak fear effect to a wide area, and applied debuffs to those who attacked. Since it was a fluttering robe, it was perfect for Cordelia to wear it. It goes well with the witch series. Whether it was a witch, a reaper, or a demon, they were all associated with the power of hell. The ancient crest is a necessary item for the ancestral regression technique, and this Eastern warrior's sword is also really good. What was in Jude's hands was something like a nadachi that was much longer than a normal longsword. As its name suggests, it was a fantasy item from the Eastern continent that existed across the continent where the Len Kingdom was located. The performance of the sword itself was outstanding, but what was important was the fact that it also had an inherent ultimate skill, like the heavenly judgment. Hell's Blood Slash. It was a powerful skill with an impressive name, but it was a skill that he couldn't use even if he got it later, because at this point in the early half of the scenario, the skill wasn't that good and was even overkill. It's a real jackpot, and most of them are cursed or sealed, so their prices are cheap. Yeah, and even though we've bought this much, we still have some money left. The Reaper's garment was cursed, and since the ancient crest was kind of a puzzle, it would not function unless it was solved with the proper solution. The Eastern warrior's sword was also sealed, so a ceremony was needed to release the seal. Jude Wiki, can you do it? Of course I can, madam. It was the time when Jude answered with a smile. But Jude. Yes. Are you going to continue using fist and foot techniques? Fist and foot techniques? Yes, you've been continuously focusing on punches when fighting. When Cordelia pointed it out, Jude reflected on himself. As she had said, the weapons that Jude had used recently involved the use of his two fists, which included the lightning punch, the lightning strike fist, and the God's fist of the Guardians of the Holy Cross. Why don't you take this opportunity to slowly change to a sword? Landius is also a swordsman. Despite Landius' shocking appearance, he was also a swordsman. According to him, he would only use his sword in a real crisis. Moreover, Jude was the child of Count Bayer, one of the 10 great swordmasters in the Len Kingdom. Most of the warriors of the Bayer family were also swordsmen, and most of the treasures that were handed down were related to the sword. In other words, it was right to use a sword to receive the family's favor. Is that so? But in the original story, Jude also used everything from swords, spears to fists. Because of his Chinmujic. His Chinmujic made him be good at everything that he did with his body. Even in the original story, Jude was a multi-weapons user who could handle virtually any existing weapon, just like Maximilian. I see, you're right, Cordelia. Since I already got the Eastern Warrior's sword, I can slowly take the swordsman route. That's good, that's good. If it's a sword, it will be easy to change items. The most common weapon in the Legend of Heroes series was the sword. Even the heavenly judgment they got right now was a sword. At Cordelia's words, Jude spoke after he pondered for a moment. Cordelia. Yes. Would you like to learn hand-to-hand martial arts? The term that Jude actually used is chisal, which means body technique skill. However, in Japanese, it is commonly known as taijutsu. Using the word taijutsu in a Korean novel felt weird, so I opted for a short description of taijutsu, which is hand-to-hand martial arts. Hand-to-hand martial arts. Yes, hand-to-hand martial arts, maybe a little swordsmanship too. They were two people who had already disrupted the original story. Then, it wasn't no longer necessary for them to follow the flow of the original story as well. Unlike the original Cordelia, the present Cordelia had a sense of combat that could only be described as crazy. Melee combat was not possible for the original Cordelia, as it was sealed in the game for balance adjustment, but it would be possible for the present Cordelia. You want me to learn Ninth Heaven's 9 doors? No, that's impossible. It's a martial art that can't be learned unless you have Chinmujic or have crazy muscles like Master Landius. He could tell that now since he had opened the door. Ninth Heaven's 9 doors was a new technique developed solely for Chinmujic. Unless the person was an Iron Man like Landius, one wouldn't be able to overcome the burden of Ninth Heaven's 9 doors, and the person's body would be ruined. Since 24 Gale Step seems to be related to Ninth Heaven's 9 doors, I'll exclude it from the list, and teach you how to protect yourself with Count Bayer's footwork techniques. It will be helpful. Swordsmanship too. You'll become magic swordsman, Cordelia. Isn't that cool? After hearing Jude's words, Cordelia imagined it for a moment, and soon had a faint smile. And Jude thought while looking at such Cordelia, I feel like a real princess maker. Of course, no matter how crazy Cordelia's sense of combat was, it was impossible for her to develop as an expert swordsman like Lucas. This is because the inner Kai of the warrior and the mana of the wizard were similar but also different. Even if Cordelia learned the basic footwork techniques or ordinary martial arts, she would not be able to properly learn higher martial art techniques. So she should focus on her magic first. Then he'd develop her into a wizard capable of close combat by adding hand-to-hand martial arts and swordsmanship into her main skills as a wizard. My daughter, Daddy will also let you learn Mushindo. I just said that I didn't want to use Japanese words here, but Jude kept using it, so here's the definition of Mushindo. Mushin in Japanese translates to no mind, which is a mental state that martial artists are said to enter during combat. It is a condition in which ego and emotions are absent, and the warrior reacts intuitively and moves instinctively. Do means method way, so it's no mind method or something like that. Yes, Daddy, I only trust in Daddy. One way or another, the two were rotten waters of Legend of Heroes 2. For them, the growth of their characters were more enjoyable than anything else. Now let's go quickly. I'll let you know the methods and direction of the Tempest Step technique, which is the footwork technique of Count Bayer. Yes, Daddy, let's go quickly. They would become stronger. They would also strengthen themselves with means that they could not originally use when it was still a game. The two Rotten Waters excitedly and hurriedly left the auction house after taking the heavenly judgment, the Reaper's garment, the ancient crest, and the Eastern warrior's sword. And around 20 minutes later, when the two arrived at their accommodation, they simultaneously remembered one fact. Red Wind. The reason why they went to the auction house in the first place. The two had completely forgotten her existence because of their unexpected jackpot and hurriedly turned their way back. Chapter 54, Episode 54, Crossing Point 4. Some changes I've made. As expected, you're an expert in rearing. Being neglected and having her sight and hearing sealed for a long time must have left her weaker and dejected. The employee said with a smile after they had gone back to the auction house's sales office in a hurry. He was the man they met on the first basement floor who specialized in the slave business. Cordelia frowned as she was peeved from hearing the man's words, but fortunately her face was covered by a mask, so no one noticed it. However, Jude could guess how she felt just by looking at Cordelia's small gestures. He then slightly moved to hide Cordelia from the employee's gaze, before he turned towards Red Wind. She was blindfolded with a large leather eye covering, and her hearing and speech were blocked by a special seal. And just as she was before, she stood upright while being almost naked. There were short handcuffs on both her arms, and her legs were bound by short chains that were barely long enough for her to walk. Had she been left for more than an hour in that state, even the most dauntless person would be depressed and dejected. In fact, Red Wind's shoulders were badly drooping, reflecting her depressed state. "I'll take her then." "Yes, I hope you have a pleasant rearing." Nodding a bit to the smiling man, Jude hurriedly stepped forward as he took the large robe he brought beforehand and used it to cover Red Wind. "Let's go back to our accommodation before releasing her, okay? Nothing good will come out if she stood out." Moreover, the two didn't have any significant emotional interaction with Red Wind yet. If they released her here, she would most likely try to escape. "Okay, let's go quickly." Cordelia responded in a low voice and walked closely to Red Wind, who slowly trod out of fear. And 30 minutes later, upon arriving at their accommodation, Jude and Cordelia first laid Red Wind in the bedroom before they came out to the living room and started talking in Korean. "First of all, we have to become friends with Red Wind." Jude nodded his head at Cordelia's insistence. Their future journey would take place across the border, so the help of Red Wind, who was a local to that place, was absolutely necessary. And what they needed was a relationship built on friendship and trust, and not on a coercive master-slave relationship. But we're lacking in time. The situation where Cordelia and Red Wind became friends was something that could be easily done. From Jude's point of view, no, even from the point of view of his previous life as outboxer, Cordelia was kind, pretty, and even honest. Furthermore, Cordelia liked Red Wind. Red Wind herself didn't exactly have an unfriendly personality, so they could easily become friends soon. But that soon would at least take more than a month. They didn't meet in a normal way, but met in the form of a purchase in the slave market. It would take a considerable amount of time to ease Red Wind's wariness. "So the way I thought of is, why is your expression like that?" "Because it looks like you're plotting something evil." What evil plot? It's just a white lie. In the end, you're going to deceive her." Just as Jude knew Cordelia well, Cordelia also knew Jude well. As Cordelia's eyes narrowed, Jude cleared his throat but did not exactly withdraw his statement. They really didn't have time. And that fact was well known to Cordelia as well. "What's your way?" "It's a good way. F***CK. Well, it's sweet to hear that after a long time." When Cordelia recoiled at his response that was smooth like flowing water, Jude laughed as if he was aiming for that in the first place and beckoned to her. "Come closer, I'll tell you." "You're always telling me to come closer for a long time." Cordelia grumbled as she moved closer to Jude, and Jude explained his plan in a whisper. Red Wind swallowed her dry saliva as she was lying down on the bed. She was pretending to stay calm, but she was honestly scared. "What will happen now?" What kind of people are those who bought me? I need to find a way to cure my father's illness. What will happen to my father if I can't return? No, what will happen to me right now? She was scared and afraid. She frequently tried to hold it in, but honestly, she felt like crying. I have to be strong. I have to be strong. I'd rather die than become a northern bastard's plaything. No, I can't just die. I'll kill and kill them. Red Wind strongly clenched her teeth, but it was only for a while before her negative feelings disappeared. Because she was suddenly overwhelmed with tremendous fatigue. I'm feeling sleepy, hungry. Come to think of it, how long had it been since I've lied down in a soft and cozy bed? Her feelings completely changed because of her drowsiness. And it was at that moment. Wake up, child of the storm. A woman's strong and pretty voice made Red Wind suddenly open her eyes. There was no eye covering, she could see ahead of her, but Red Wind immediately closed her eyes again because of the dazzling light that filled her surroundings. Do not be afraid, child of the storm, I am Great Storm. Red Wind held her breath at the voice that resonated like a voice from the heavens. She stood up from her spot, bent down, and respectfully bowed. Ah, Great Storm. It was a reflexive action. And the voice did not give Red Wind a chance to doubt it. Red Wind, daughter of Red Gale, the brave child who went on a journey to cure her father's illness. Red Wind held her breath again. It was real. The pronunciation was a little bad, but that was only a minor problem. The proof was that it knew everything from her father's name, to the reason why she came across the border and into the Southerners' land. She had never mentioned her father's name since she came down to the south. Great Storm. It was the guardian deity that the Great Storm tribe worshipped and obeyed. In the Legend of Heroes series, it was one of the beings called the barbarian gods. Red Wind, a great crisis is coming throughout the entire tribe, and even across the Great Plains. Red Wind recoiled. Perhaps her father's illness was also related to the Great Crisis, she thought. Your thoughts are correct, my child, Red Wind, daughter of Red Gale. I gave a divine revelation to 2 southern humans, thus they have saved you, so join them, help them, they will break down the crisis in the north. Southern humans. Red Wind raised her head and asked. She still couldn't open her eyes properly because of the dazzling light, but she could vaguely see a person's silhouette. It was a very beautiful silhouette of a woman. It is a man and a woman. The woman's name is Cordelia, the man's name is Jude. The red-haired woman is very beautiful and good-natured, but sometimes fierce. She's like an animal. The good man is a handsome, fine, and nice person, who always sincerely understands the animal-like woman. For your information, the woman is completely in love with the man. Why do I somehow have a strange feeling with these lines? What on earth is the content about? Cordelia, who was acting as Great Storm, asked Jude with her eyes, but Jude was consistently playing dumb. She didn't even know what the written message was about, as Jude had only written down the Korean pronunciation of the Northern Barbarians' language that she was now reading. Child, trust in those two, help the 2 people, the 2 will be your friends. That was it. As soon as Cordelia finished reading the lines, Jude pushed into the room again the sleeping gas magic created by combining the sleep magic circle and the wind magic circle. Red Wind, who had low magic resistance, fell into a deep sleep again. Good, let's quickly tie her up again. Cordelia, who was on top of the magic circle that projected light, quickly came down from her spot in the room. There were various magic circles activated in the room to deceive Red Wind's senses. Each one was a low-level magic, but there were a lot of magic circles, so it made quite a dreamy effect. If she woke up in a state of being restrained, like before she fell asleep, she will think of this moment as just a dream. To such a Red Wind, we'll approach her, saying that we received Great Storm's divine revelation, right? That's right, then Red Wind will trust us. Because it was the guidance of Great Storm who protected the tribe, and not anyone else. It makes sense, but I'm somehow uncomfortable. It's for the great cause, hang in there. This is sort of isn't these just the lines that villains would say in games or movies? Saying thus and thus about the just and great cause to protect their selfish desires. Hey, it's not, it really is for the great cause. Anyway, let's quickly restrain her and put away the magic circles. Ahem. Cordelia reluctantly nodded and began to restrain Red Wind, who was in a deep sleep, while Jude hastily removed the magic circles. And after about an hour or so, "Hey, can you hear me?" Red Wind woke up to the soft and gentle voice. She tried to open her eyes right away, but she could see nothing but black because of her blindfold. "Wait a second, I'll untie it for you immediately." It was the continent's official language. It was the words used by the humans guarding the wall. Red Wind was not skilled with it, but she was capable of speaking it even though she stammered. She was quite good in listening to it, though. Oh, great storm! Was it a dream, or was it really a divine revelation? As if to calm down her anxiety, Red Wind swallowed hard, and at that moment her visibility was set free. Ugh! She groaned and adjusted to the light, and her eyes caught the faces of two people. She both saw a girl and boy whose beauty was to the point that made her eyes open wide. Great Wind unconsciously began thinking of Great Storm's words, and Cordelia struck the final blow to her. "Hello, I am called Cordelia. This is my fiancé, Jude." Cordelia and Jude. The names spoken by Great Storm. I agree. That was it. Red Wind tried to hastily say Great Storm's name, but instead, she was helped in sitting up in a crooked posture. The shackles on her hands and feet were gone. "You don't have to be so vigilant. Great Storm guided us to you. That's why we bought you at the auction house." At Jude's words, Cordelia nodded, and then grabbed the hands of Red Wind. "You were really scared, right? It's okay now. We're here to help you." Great Storm. The divine revelation. Cordelia's warm hands and moist eyes. Her wariness completely disappeared. Ever since she had crossed the border and up to now, Red Wind had been trying to maintain a strong mind, but it was impossible for her now. She felt relieved. Her tension disappeared. Her tears burst and came pouring down from her eyes like a dam. "You were," because she was only a 16-year-old now. It's okay. Cordelia tightly hugged Red Wind, who burst into tears, but rather than her tears stopping, it only increased further. However, it was all right. Cordelia hugged Red Wind tightly, and Red Wind sadly cried for a long time in Cordelia's arms. And as he intensely watched the entire scene, Jude thought, "Bingo!" He thought that while the two were in the midst of warmness, and he continued to think that they had succeeded in breaking down Red Wind's wariness. They could now become friends with Red Wind without wasting any time or trouble. All is good if the results are good. Ahem. Jude spoke as he excused himself and looked at Cordelia and Red Wind with a satisfied face. I know, a place to cross the border, neglect of surveillance, gap blind spot. The next morning, Red Wind was exhausted from crying and had fallen asleep last night. She was now eating a sandwich that Jude had ordered from the room service, as she spoke in a stammer. "Can you guide us?" "The way only our tribe knows. It's a secret, but I tell, Cordelia is my friend, Jude is Cordelia's man." At the end of Red Wind's words, Cordelia's faint smile looked somewhat cute, but she tilted her head once and looked back at Jude. "Are we going to start right away?" "I guess so. We've been here for 2 days already, so whether it's Count H.R. Svelga or the Devil's Hand, our pursuers will catch up to us. We are fugitives." When the two had their own conversation, they both spoke in Korean. Because of that, Red Wind was confused, as she didn't understand what they were talking about. Cordelia then looked back at her and said, "We're going to eat and then go. We'll ask for your guidance. Do you know how to ride a horse?" "I ride horses well. I will guide you." Red Wind energetically answered, finishing her meal as she ate the remaining sandwich in one mouthful, and then gulped down the milk. "Okay, then let's start right away." Their baggage was already loaded on the horse. With the Eastern warrior's sword on his back, Jude took the lead, while Cordelia had the heavenly judgment on her back and carried the sacred rod as a cane. She stepped forward as she looked after Red Wind. "I'm sorry, just keep it on until we cross the border." "It's okay, we can't help it, I understand." It was because of the slave necklace that Red Wind was wearing around her neck. Red Wind, with her snow-white hair and long ears, were as prominent as Jude and Cordelia. If a northern barbarian walked around without a slave necklace, everyone would see it as strange. Who will ride in front this time? As soon as they completed the checkout procedure and came out, the stableman had already brought forward the horses of Jude and Cordelia. Since there were 3 people, 2 people had to ride together, so Jude asked Cordelia, and she replied with a wink. "Shall I ride in front?" "As the madam wishes." But it was at that moment. "Cordelia rides with me, I am lighter than Jude, that's good for the horses." That was correct. Somehow, Jude had grown tall and started to gain muscles lately. Is that so?" "Yeah." The 2 somehow unconsciously spoke in an awkward manner, and they all rode on the horses, with Red Wind behind Cordelia. And just before their departure, Cordelia looked back at Red Wind, who suddenly raised her voice as if she realized something, and Red Wind spoke with an apologetic look. "I forgot. From now on I will take a hint. I will not forget." "You'll take a hint? What are you talking about?" However, Red Wind didn't speak anymore, and Cordelia was feeling doubtful but didn't ask any more questions. Why did I get a strange feeling? As for the other person, well then, let's go. Jude smiled bitterly as he took the lead, and the 3 started racing towards the north. And at the same time, at the former Northern Viscount's territory, Gar-El and Adelia were frowning as they faced each other. The 2 had ran and ran again through all sorts of means, such as using recovery magic to relieve the horses' fatigue. "Are you saying that they headed north?" "Yes, they're still moving north." Adelia also tilted her head as she found it strange. The last place that Jude and Cordelia were discovered was in Frost Anvil. It was located at the northwest end of the country, so there was nowhere else they could possibly go if they went north. If they headed north, there would be the bustling city of Lankabust, and if they go further, there would be Thunderdoom Fortress, the nest of the jackdaws. But it was strange. Even if they had headed to Lankabust, it was impossible that Jude and Cordelia would have headed to Thunderdoom Fortress. Moreover, it was the direction the tracking magic pointed to. On the map, the 2 were heading somewhere other than Thunderdoom Fortress. Where are they going? Are they trying to cross the border? Kidnapped? Excuse me. Maybe they were kidnapped, like being caught by the devil's hand and being forced to move. Gar-El, who had been speaking so far, stopped talking as he flinched, because Adelia had a terrifying expression. "There is a possibility." "Hey, Lady Adelia, that was just my guess." "Let's go quickly." Adelia didn't seem to wait for Gar-El's answer, as she immediately climbed on the horse and started running. Gar-El followed Adelia in a hurry too. And again in another place. In a desolate forest. "They're heading north, we'll meet them at the end of the norths." At the words of Carnos, who had hidden himself in the shade, Saluzia nodded. The chances of activating Carnos' foresight was infrequent, but once activated, it boasted of a significant accuracy rate. "We go to the northern border. This time they will catch the 2. The demonic humans led by Saluzia began to move. And one more person. Unlike what Jude and Cordelia and everyone else had in mind, the person moved and headed north. Chapter 55, Episode 55, Winter Flower 1. About 300 years ago, there was a king who was called the Civil Engineering King. He built a great wall across the northern border to prevent the invasion of the northern barbarians. It was an enormous and large-scale construction project. The construction, which began in the 5th year of the Civil Engineering King's reign, lasted more than 30 years and was finally finished in the 3rd year after the Civil Engineering King's death. The northern wall was guarded by the jackdaws. However, neither the wall nor the jackdaws were perfect. As it stretched across the entire border, the entire wall did not have a uniform height, thickness, and defense. There was also a limit to the number of jackdaws, so it was impossible to keep a close watch on the entire border. Hence, inevitable gaps occurred. There were areas where the defense was left only to the wall. This way, it was the very place where Red Wind crossed the border. Jude followed Red Wind's guidance without any complaints, while Cordelia dozed off with her head in front of Red Wind as they rode on the horse together. About half an hour passed again like that. In a place where human traces were scarce, and it was deserted and out of sight, Jude decided to take a break. If the patrol passes by, they'll see our traces, because their footprints could be clearly seen on the snowy field. But they didn't worry about that for now. Jude properly swept the snow under a tree to create a place to sit. Cordelia, please. Okay. Cordelia was half asleep and had a sleepy face, but she sluggishly nodded and heated the water canteen to make the cold water lukewarm. No matter how infrequent the place was from humans, it was still within the surveillance area of the jackdaws. If they started a fire, there was a risk of being caught right away because of the smoke. Here, beef jerky. The jerky is hard. Cordelia grumbled, but she knew well that they didn't have much of a choice. After he gave some to Red Wind as well, they started to chew on the beef jerky. They continued to eat for a long time without saying a word. Suddenly, Red Wind tugged Cordelia's sleeve. What is it? When Cordelia asked with a smile, Red Wind hesitated for a while as if she was choosing her words, before she spoke again. Cordelia, I'm curious about one thing that... Yes, what is it? Fac F*ck, what does that mean? Cordelia asked again with a stunned face, and Red Wind said again. Cordelia, often you say it, Jude, and secret words of love that you share. It was something that was not in the continent's official language. Words of love that were often used by the two. When Red Wind carefully listened, F*ck was a word that came out very often. And no, wait a second. Cordelia was embarrassed. She was so embarrassed that she didn't even think about the comment on the words of love. How do I explain? It had been quite some time since the two had began talking in Korean, and her old habit had revived. Cordelia groaned and looked back at Jude, and Jude replied with his eyes. It's karma, who told you to swear so much? It's not a curse, it's an exclamation. But it was a useless quarrel. Cordelia turned to Red Wind again instead of the unhelpful Jude, as she said as calmly as possible. That what F*ck means is... Yes, F*ck. Cordelia flinched at Red Wind, saying that with a smile. It felt like the Red Wind that she liked so much was swearing at her. Well, that is an exclamation. Exclamation. Yeah, exclamation, so cool, wonderful, amazing, well, something like that. It didn't sound like her explanation worked, but when one thought about it, Cordelia had in fact used that very word for that kind of purpose. Upon hearing Cordelia's desperate explanation, Red Wind's eyes sparkled, and then she said with a broad smile. F*ck Cordelia, F*ck Jude, both of you are F*ck. Red Wind brightly shouted before she sent an impatient gaze to Cordelia. It seemed her eyes were asking for an answer. Yes, Red Wind is F*ck. F*ck Cordelia, so good, F*ck. As Red Wind hugged Cordelia and cursed, or rather, repeated the exclamation, Jude finally couldn't stop himself from laughing. Kukuku ha is this karma? Although Red Wind brightly using foul language was shocking, it seemed to be helpful in some way. That way would be Cordelia reducing her use of exclamations in the future due to education issues. And indeed, when Cordelia tried to exclaim in succession by reflex, she tightly shut her mouth and was in distress. This is so funny, it's so much fun. Jude, is this funny? I'm glad that the two of you are having fun. Jude roughly evaded Cordelia's angry look and said to Red Wind again. Red Wind, are we entering the valley like this? Yes, but the valley is rugged, it's narrow, the horse can't go. At Red Wind's words, Cordelia was surprised as her eyes widely opened, while Jude nodded. Because Jude had already roughly guessed it. It would be natural as it is a place where the surveillance of the jackdaws is negligent. Jude, what about the horses then? At the same time he was thinking, he heard Cordelia's voice. Jude replied with a shrug, as they had no other choice. We have to release them. They'll be released. Oh, they'll become wild horses, or some lucky person will find them. Cordelia had a very unwilling expression at hearing Jude's answer, as she found the fact to be really hard. Let's release them at this point. If we take them deep into the valley, we'll have trouble coming out too. I understand. Cordelia replied with a gloomy voice before standing up from her seat and releasing the saddle of the horse she had been riding on so far. There was a sense of regret in each of her touch, as if she held a lot of affection for it. Somehow you're very affectionate. Jude happily watched her before he rose from his seat too, unfastened the saddle of the horse, and brought together their small luggage. And the time of parting finally came. Jude and Cordelia made the horses run forward by slapping the horse's butt. The two horses began running on the white snow field. Farewell, Jude. Farewell, Cordelia. The two who spoke at the same time looked back at each other and said immediately again. Cordelia, you named the horse Cordelia. Yours is Jude. No, it was a male horse. In that case, me too, it was a female horse. Red Wind burst out into a laugh at hearing the two's words. You're of the same mind, you two, really seeking fantastic. She had a bright, innocent, and pretty smile. Do something about her. I'll work hard. After finishing their conversation with just their eyes, Jude and Cordelia tried to stop Red Wind, who was trying to use her newly learned vocabulary, as they urged her to step forward again. Time had passed. In the afternoon, the group was able to reach the valley's entrance after passing through the storming blizzard that started. It widens after passing here, just have to struggle a bit. Red Wind said as they passed a narrow path that one person could barely pass through, while Jude wondered if they should camp out tonight or move overnight. And Cordelia suddenly stopped. Cordelia. Jude discovered it too late as he turned around and asked, but Cordelia didn't immediately answer. She looked behind her back with a frown. Hey, it's a strange story, but I don't have a good feeling here. She had been feeling something ominous since a while ago. It was as if someone was stabbing a spear from behind. If it were someone else's words, he would have let it go. But it was Cordelia's words. Cordelia's sense is special. Her sense was simply great. It wasn't something that ended at that level. Various abilities existed in Pleiades, the world of Legend of Heroes. In fact, it wasn't just Cordelia, as Jude's own memory and calculation abilities were in a stronger state compared to the days when he was on Earth, and even before he awakened here and opened the second door of the ninth heaven's 9 doors. The same could be said of Cordelia's sensitivity. Perhaps it was a power that belonged to something that was close to foresight. In fact, Cordelia's sense had been much more accurate than before, since she had learned the witch transformation. I don't see anything, said Red Wind. As she possessed the blood of winter elves, her vision was superior than that of humans, so she couldn't see any enemies within her sight nearby them. But Jude believed in Cordelia's sense. Let's hurry up. Jude started to walk as if he was almost running, and Cordelia also increased her speed. Thus, Red Wind had no choice but to run and follow the two people. The narrow path ended, and a wide road came into sight. It was a basin terrain surrounded by steep cliffs. There was still no one near them. It was a quiet place with only the 3 of them here. But Cordelia kept looking back. Her ominous feeling kept getting stronger and stronger. The sensation of being stabbed in the back also grew stronger. Oh! At that very moment, the roar of a beast came over their heads. Above the valley, 3 large dogs came down from the steep wall. With dark red fur and yellow eyes, they were definitely not ordinary wild animals. Hellhound, a demonic dog. It didn't end with the 3. More demonic dogs appeared from above the valley. Run! The screaming Jude promptly threw away the luggage he was carrying and then carried Red Wind on his back. Cordelia also immediately activated the witch transformation and cast haste, magic on herself and Jude. Oh! Ow! More than 10 hellhounds came down from the wall in a rush. Jude clenched his teeth and focused only on running. Intercepting multiple enemies was Cordelia's specialty, and not that of Jude himself. "Get away from us." As Cordelia's dark red hair fluttered, she released her magic. More than 10 magic missiles struck the middle of the Hellhound's foreheads as if they were guided missiles. It was a really marvelous skill. In the entire Len Kingdom, one could barely count in their hands those who can show that level of control while in the middle of running with haste, activated. The Hellhounds who were struck in the middle of their foreheads fell off at random. Cordelia continued to cast grease in succession over a wide area as she caught up with Jude, and while all that was happening, she spit out some strange words. "Something, I can feel there's something more." A feeling that she found difficult to explain herself. Jude ran and looked back. Thanks to the area with grease, the Hellhounds were held back and stranded at the pretty much wide area. They're the advance party. No matter how deserted the place was, they couldn't have brought 10 Hellhounds from the beginning, so it was evident that they were summoned nearby. And that meant one thing. Saluzia had moved. She, the branch head, had finally come and struck them here. But how did that happen? It was normally not possible. Even if they had noticed that the group's purpose was to cross the border, it was impossible for them to attack their group in such a desolate place, as if it was an ambush. The group didn't specify their location to anyone else, nor did they give a clue to infer their purpose, as was the case with the sunflower. There was something that Jude himself didn't know. Jude cut off his thoughts there. What was important was the fact that Saluzia was somewhere nearby. Jude kept running and thinking. Cordelia's sense. There was another thing that she felt. It wasn't Saluzia. Saluzia was with the pack of Hellhounds. It was an ambiguous feeling in the first place, but that did not mean that it was something chaotic. The other one that Cordelia felt. Kawa. Jude and Cordelia simultaneously looked at the sky. They saw a crow. And at that moment, Jude realized it. Cordelia also had a hunch. That was it. That another thing that Cordelia felt. They had to follow that crow to get out of their current crisis. Jackdaw. Red Wind, who belatedly spotted the crow, said in a voice mixed with fear. For her, a northern barbarian, the jackdaw was a bad omen among all the bad omens. But it wasn't. The completely jet-black bird was different from a jackdaw. It was a pure crow. As for what that meant, the Hellhounds managed to get out of the area with grease with some difficulty and began to speed up and bark again. Instead of looking at them, Jude looked up the sky. The crows were increasing. They seemed to increase one by one, and before he knew it, the crows covered the sky. The sound of their flapping wings in the sky alone seemed to be ear-splitting. Red Wind was very frightened and shrank her body. Moreover, her eyes saw the direction they were heading to now. A cliff. It was a cliff, but Jude didn't stop. Rather, he ran faster. The Hellhounds noisily cried behind his back. Owu. Owu. Jude saw Cordelia, so did Cordelia, and she nodded. She refreshingly smiled. One could count in their hands the characters in Legend of Heroes who had such a splendid entrance. Or rather, there was only one person that the crow symbolized in the first place. Hug me. Jude stretched out his hand. Cordelia threw herself at Jude, and he barely carried Cordelia in his arms while Red Wind was on his back. Together, he threw themselves over the cliff. Kaira. Red Wind screamed, but it was for a short time. The flapping sound of the wings made by the dozens, or rather, hundreds of birds, swallowed up all the surrounding sounds. The flock of crows shrouded Jude and Cordelia. Cordelia tightly hugged Jude's neck as she closed her eyes. So did Jude. And time passed. The sound of the wings that seemed to never end gradually died down. Solid ground. A place where they could step on and stand. Jude staggered for a while, but soon regained his balance. He slowly opened his eyes, confirming the existence of Cordelia, whom he held tightly in his arms. They were still in a place covered with white snow. The crows that flew into the sky scattered in all directions and disappeared. And in the front, a person looked at Jude and Cordelia, who were supporting each other and breathing roughly. That person had dark blue eyes, pure white hair and a white face, but everything else was jet black. Jude knew that person, who was wearing a long black robe over his head. Therefore, he put that person's name on his mouth first. Jude Bayer greets Camille. The ghost blade Camille, one of the 6 heads of the Guardians of the Holy Cross. The protagonist, who together with Landius, were the 2 giant stars of Legend of Heroes 1. Landius, disciple. Camille spoke in a low voice, responding to Jude's call, and then stepped towards Jude and Cordelia. Hello.